Facing a life sentence can be a terrifying moment for cartel members. These individuals are used to having power and control, and now have to deal with the consequences of their actions. Their reactions can vary from defiance to despair as they come to terms with the reality of their punishment. It's a clear reminder that even the most powerful can be held accountable for their crimes. Prepare to be amazed by the reactions of these 7 cartel members as they confront the weight of their deeds and the life-changing sentence ahead. Number 7. El Chapo. To start off, we have El Chapo, whose real name is Joaquin Guzman. He became infamous as one of the most well-known drug lords in history. He was born in a poor rural area of Sinaloa, Mexico. He started his criminal career in the 1970s, initially growing marijuana and heroin fields. By the 1980s, Guzman had joined the Cali Cartel and rose quickly in the ranks because he was smart, ruthless, and good at escaping the police. He later became the leader of his own cartel, the Sinaloa Cartel, which grew to be one of the biggest and busiest drug trafficking groups globally. He also became famous for his effective smuggling of drugs from Mexico into the USA. So after that, he got the nickname of El Chapo. But later, he got caught in Guatemala and was sent back to Mexico. But after some time, he escaped from a super secure prison in Jalisco in 2001. But how? Well, he supposedly bribed the prison guards and hid in a laundry cart. This daring escape only added to his reputation and legend as a master at evading authorities. But guess what happened next? In 2016, authorities caught him again, and this time, they sent him to trial into the United States. So his trial started in February 2019. After a 3-month trial, he was found guilty by a federal court. What's more shocking is that they had 14 people testify against him, providing strong evidence. During the trial, it was revealed how he and his group used complex methods to smuggle illegal substances into the United States. They also found out that he used all sorts of sneaky ways, like fishing boats, submarines, and even airplanes with hidden compartments and underground tunnels. During his reign, he smuggled massive amounts of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana into the US, generating billions of dollars in revenue. But not only this, he used a wide-reaching network of smuggling routes, which included underground tunnels beneath the US-Mexico border to traffic drugs into the United States. Along with his illegal actions, he became well known for his extravagant way of life. He lived in luxurious mansions, traveled in private jets, and even owned a private zoo with rare animals. His huge wealth and power made him a big, important figure in the criminal underworld. Besides drug crimes, he was also involved in violent acts like killings, kidnappings, and threatening other cartels and government officials. His ruthless actions painted him as a fearsome figure, landing him at the forefront of law enforcement's watch list on both sides of the border. But his arrest and extradition to the United States in 2017 marked a significant moment for the Sinaloa Cartel, signifying the end of an era. However, his trial in 2019 became an even bigger global event, providing a rare glimpse into the inner workings of one of the most notorious criminal organizations in history. So, his time came to an end, and he received a life sentence with an extra 30 years for leading the cartel, along with being fined $12.6 billion. Even though the punishment was shockingly severe, he showed no reaction at all when the verdict was announced and remained completely emotionless. Number 6. Jose Govea Jimenez. Next, we have Jose Govea Jimenez, who was once a powerful member of a famous Mexican cartel, climbed the ranks to become a crucial figure in the group's heroin trafficking scheme, leaving many shocked. Jimenez ran the cartel heroin smuggling business very effectively, sending large shipments to Columbus, Ohio, where the city's location made it easy to distribute the drug across the area. His cartel group didn't just bring in a lot of heroin to Columbus, they also used brutal methods to keep control over the drug business across the whole area. His cartel would force rival gangs to submit or completely destroy them, solidifying his control in the criminal underworld. The investigation also revealed he had a secret network to transport heroin shipments, hidden in various vehicles through secret routes, to evade law enforcement. He and his associates used experienced communication methods and coded messages to coordinate their illegal activities precisely, leaving minimal evidence of their wrongdoing. Additionally, authorities discovered the hidden network of distribution hubs and safe houses used by him and his associates associates to store and move heroin across the city. The heroin trade raked millions in illicit profits for Jimenez and his associate. This flood of highly addictive drugs into Columbus fueled a rise in addiction and related crimes across the city. The problems it created overwhelmed local law enforcement as communities struggled with the devastating impact. Despite the risk, his operation proved extremely lucrative, extending its reach across multiple states and making it difficult for authorities to take down. His control of the drug business got stronger because people were scared of him. There were stories about his rivals and people who might speak about him meeting bad fate at his hands, making everyone afraid of him. The atmosphere of fear made it really hard for the police to find proof and convict him and his gang. As the case against Jimenez unfolded in court, details emerged about his extravagant lifestyle and spending habits. This painted a picture of a man driven by greed and a desire for power rather than any higher purpose. The fancy houses, expensive vehicles, and wild parties were clear evidence of his dirty, illegal money. It was shocking to see how much wealth he had accumulated through his criminal activities. This further shows the terrible impact of his actions on people. Even after a weak attempt at apologizing through an interpreter, Jimenez couldn't convince the judge. Judge Kimberly Cockcroft gave him a tough 21-year sentence, leading to his deportation when he finished. During sentencing, Judge Kimberly told Govea Jimenez, "There is no way we could ever calculate the damage your actions have caused." He didn't seem to care about spending his last years behind bars and left the courtroom with a disrespectful, cool expression, as if he didn't care at all about the consequences of his crimes. Number 5. Jeremy Christian. Next on our list is Jeremy Christian, a member of the Ku Klux Klan, also known as KKK, a notorious white supremacist group. The US government considers the Ku Klux Klan a terrorist organization because of its long history of targeting different minority groups. These groups include African Americans, Jews, Latinos, Asian Americans, Catholics, immigrants, and homosexuals. His hateful organization has done some really terrible things, like murders, bombings, vandalism, and spreading hate speech. It's shocking to think they use these actions to scare and control people because they believe in white supremacy. He grew up in Portland, Oregon, believing in white supremacy. His strong racism and intolerance caused him to live a life full of violence and hate. So in May 2017, he brutally attacked 2 people on a MATS train, stabbing them to death. One victim was a 53-year-old man named Ricky Best, and the other was Nam Kamechi, who tried to help. Prior to the assault, he verbally harassed 2 teenage girls, one of whom was African American and the other an immigrant from Somalia. He directed hateful speech toward Muslims, Jews, Christians, and others. One time, he physically assaulted a person named Kamichi and destroyed his phone when Kamichi attempted to record this incident. Witnesses said it was crazy and scary when he used a knife, said a lot of racist things, and made threats. A military veteran and father of 4, and Kamichi were not expecting the sudden and pointless attack. After all this, the Portland community united against hate and racism, strongly condemning his actions. Vigils and memorials were held to honor those who lost their lives, and to demand justice and accountability. The fast and firm response from law enforcement and the courts made it clear that acts of domestic terrorism and hate crimes would not be accepted. During his trial, he pretended to be sorry at first. He seemed serious and cried, making people believe he felt bad. But then, his real self came out when he started threatening and insulting one of his old victims. It showed that he wasn't sorry at all, and still had a lot of anger and violence inside him. Because of this violent outburst, the judge decided to give him a life sentence with no possibility of parole. Jeremy Christian, even after the trial, was not even ashamed of his acts. Number 4. Marciano Milan Vasquez. The next on our list is Marciano Milan Vasquez, who was a member of the Los Hadas Cartel, known for his role in drug and weapon trafficking, as well as murder. He was arrested in Texas in 2015, suspected of being a regional leader of Los Hadas and Piedras Negras, because his supposed crimes were connected to drug trafficking into the USA. Texas prosecutors claimed jurisdiction over his case, with plenty of witnesses testifying against him. He faced charges of multiple murders, drug, and weapon trafficking. a previous member of the Zeus cartel, stated in court that Milan Vasquez worked with other cartel leaders to bribe and intimidate politicians. This was done to protect the Los Sades trafficking activities. Other witnesses came forward, stating that Milan Vasquez had been responsible for the deaths of at least 29 individuals. Additionally, he was implicated in the tragic events of the 2011 Hyundai massacre. A witness shared a horrifying account where Milan Vasquez dismembered a 6-year-old girl while she was alive in front of her parents. He then ordered for the parents and 15 others to be executed. Witnesses described how he started out as a low-ranking member of the gang, but gradually rose through the ranks. Eventually, he became the boss of Piedras Negras, a city in the state of Coahuila, known as a hotspot for smugglers. For years, he was able to continue his criminal activities without facing any consequences. He helped smuggle millions of dollars worth of drugs across the border and killed anyone who tried to stop him. Later in 2016, Milan Vasquez was found guilty on all charges and was given 7 life sentences. Additionally, he got an extra 10 years in prison for lying to officials and had to pay a $1 million fine. During the trial, he appeared visibly ashamed and remorseful. Number 3. Rosalio Reta. Moving on, the next on our list is Rosalio Reta, who served as an enforcer for the Los Zetas gang in Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas, during the 2000s. Rosalio Reta was born in Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas, Mexico, in 1990. He grew up on both sides of the United States-Mexico border. At the age of 13, he ventured into Nuevo Laredo in search of excitement. Introduced by Gabriel Cardona, he joined the Gulf Cartel and began working at a ranch under Miguel Trevino Morales. In this place, he witnessed his first executions and was coerced into becoming a child soldier for Los Zetas. That very night, Trevino ordered Rita to carry out his first killing, and he became part of a team of proficient assassins made up of Mexican-American Jews. After training in using handguns, assault rifles, and rocket launchers, Trevino then sent out his team of assassins onto the streets of Laredo, Texas, where they carried out a series of high-profile murders. After he finished his job in Mexico, he realized he would likely face retaliation from Trevino, so he turned himself into the authorities and agreed to testify against Los Zetas. When he was eventually caught, he confessed to the detectives that he felt a thrill every time he killed someone, comparing it to the sensation of being Superman or James Bond. He confessed to the authorities that he had spent 6 months at a training camp in Mexico, where he received instructions in shooting assault rifles and hand-to-hand combat. He also alleged that one of his combat trainers was an Israeli mercenary, who often boasted about being trained in marksmanship. He was sentenced to 70 years in prison for the murders he committed. During the trial, he didn't look ashamed at all. Number 2. Felix Gallardo. Moving on to next on our list is Felix Gallardo, who was among the rare individuals who started dealing drugs in Mexico. He was born on January 8, 1946. Raised in Bella Vista, he had a completely different background compared to many drug dealers, as he did not come from severe poverty. He completed high school and pursued a business degree in college. Following his college years, he entered the Mexican Federal Judicial Police and eventually became the personal bodyguard for the governor of Sinaloa. This allowed him to make connections with influential politicians, which he then used to start a drug trafficking organization. To establish a drug trafficking group, he created the Guadalajara Cartel in the 1970s. He collaborated closely with some Colombian cartels to transport his drug shipments. During its peak, the Guadalajara Cartel was making $5 billion every year. However, their troubles and downfall began when a man named Enrique Kiki Camarena entered the scene. He was a DEA agent who began investigating the cartel's activities in the 1980s. By establishing connections with some members of the Gallardo's group, he was able to gather intelligence about the cartel's marijuana operations. This investigation led to uncovering links between lower-level politicians and the drug trade, including shipments destined for the United States. Camarena informed the Mexican government of his discoveries, prompting the raid on Gallardo's plantation. In retaliation for the raid on his plantation, Gallardo ordered the abduction of Camarena and his helicopter pilot pilot as they departed the U.S. Consulate General in Guadalajara on February 7, 1985. In a horrifying twist, they were transported to a secluded area where they endured 30 hours of relentless torture. The extreme brutality of the torture proved fatal, and tragically, after 48 hours in the hands of Gallardo and his associates, Camarena and his innocent pilot tragically lost their lives. Their abandoned bodies were later discovered by the roadside and eventually found by Mexican authorities. The tragic deaths of Camarena and his pilot sparked outrage in the United States, with the US government demanding that the Mexican government arrest everyone involved. However, this posed a significant challenge, as Gallardo had bribed government officials, making it extremely difficult for them to apprehend him. Despite these obstacles, the Mexican government eventually had to give in to international pressure and take Gallardo into custody. Gallardo was apprehended at his home in Guadalajara, still wearing his bathrobe. Surprisingly, he did not resist arrest, and no weapons were required to detain him. When he arrived at the police station, his reaction was peculiarly motionless, exhibiting a disturbing mixture of guilt and indifference. He received a 40-year prison term, yet, in September 2022, he was granted the opportunity to serve his sentence while under house arrest. During the trial, he looked calm. Number 1. Jorge Eduardo Costilla Sanchez. On number 1 position, we have Jorge Eduardo Costilla Sanchez, who was considered even more ruthless than some of the most notorious drug lords. He was born on August 1, 1971, in the state of Tamaulipas, Mexico. He began his career not as a drug lord, but as a regular municipal worker. It was through connections with some of his friends that he gained knowledge and insight into the drug trade. In the late 1990s, he formed a friendship with the leader of the Gulf Cartel, Osiel Cardenas Guillen. Cardenas recruited him into the cartel and promoted him to a senior position because of his strong passion for violence. During their efforts to make the cartel drug trafficking profitable, Costilla and Cardenas encountered 2 DEA spies who had entered their territory to observe the cartel's activities. They both considered killing the DEA spies they had discovered, but the agents reminded them of the severe repercussions of harming U.S. citizens and federal agents. After considering their options, Costilla and Cardenas decided to spare the lives of the DEA agents. Yet, their choice faced consequences when, on March 14, 2003, Cardenas was apprehended during a confrontation with the Mexican military. When Cardenas was arrested, the leadership of the cartel passed to Costilla. He chose to collaborate with Cardenas' brother and a few other drug lords to maintain the cartel's operation. Their ongoing power struggles and conflicts turned the Gulf Cartel into a fierce battleground. During this time, the Los Zetas faction broke away from the cartel and launched a rebellion against its former leaders. This conflict escalated into one of the bloodiest wars in Mexican history. Ultimately, Costilla's actions caught up with him, resulting in his arrest on September 12, 2012, in a small neighborhood in Tampico. Seemingly expecting his arrest, he offered no resistance upon being taken into custody. Before this incident, he maintained a low profile, with only 2 known photographs of him in circulation. However, in 2015, he was extradited to the United States, where he received a life sentence, a punishment that likely left him feeling remorseful. This marked the end of his reign as a powerful drug lord, as he had to spend the rest of his life behind bars. In the end, those who committed such terrible acts were held accountable, facing harsh repercussions for their deeds. Justice prevailed, bringing a fitting end to their wrongdoing. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the like button below and subscribe to the channel. It helps us grow and to give you more quality content such as this.